Hi everyone, this is a video response to Casper, the BoyDiviner's video on his most masculine decks, and I would like to also do my take on how I type my decks. Although I would like to say that I do not have such an impressive collection of tarot decks like what Casper has. That's because I stopped my deck collection at 22. I have 22 decks in my collection, and the last one being my own deck. So what I would like to do a bit differently from his video is to show how I classify the art of the deck, the art being very important nowadays, to like how I see it as masculine or feminine through my my relationship to anime, which is what you're seeing right in front here, and also like how sometimes looks can be deceiving, and how communication is also important in the typing of our decks. So let me start first now by showing you how I type the art. So Casper used the word yang for masculine, and yin for feminine. So I've been trying to look for good describing words for both of these sides, but it's easier to find a good describing word for masculine, the yang, and because yang has typically always been dealing with the light, and so it has more good words, so to speak, whereas for yin, it has the meaning of darkness, and so many describing words using yin are kind of they do not feel so good. So I am not able to find a good describing word for yin, but for yang, one Chinese noun, adjective, that I can think of immediately is the word yang gang. So you will have hear the word yang in the noun, the adjective itself. So yang gang in our dictionary is typically used to describe a man who is strong, who is very strong. So it is a adjective describing a male typically. And yang itself, I always think of colors, and for gang, I always think about structures. So even though it's it's a strong, describing strong, a strong male. So but what I often see in this is also brightness and also structures. So this is how I classify masculine art. For example, you can see here, there are a lot of, sorry for the glare, so there are a lot of structures, a lot of strong action, and I will often also see grayscale or a monotone as being a masculine property, as in what you usually see in comics, the Japanese manga. Of course, there are also colors here, but it's very muted and a bit distant. So you can already see there's some kind of contradiction in my words. Before that, I say yang brings to mind of colors, but here I'm saying masculine art is a bit more monotonous, and probably I will show you some examples later of the decks. This is also a masculine art to me, where the lines are more defined. So there's a clear distinction between the object and the surroundings. And this is where I say color made me young. So the colors here are very saturated and very bright, very solid. And for the more feminine art, I can't find a good word to describe it, so I can only show you some examples. So here will be one feminine art to me, whereby although you can see a clear distinction between the object and the surrounding, you will have noticed that the colors of the outline used is not a stark black. So the colors of the lines are colored, not just black itself. And of course, the most one very easy thing to classify an art as being feminine is that the colors are very soft. In this case, this is a watercolor, so it's not very saturated. But then there are also cases whereby very saturated colors like this also brings to mind the feminine, but there's a softness in the kind of colors used. So this is a feminine art to me. So with that, a simple look at it, I will show you some of the art decks that I have in my collection, and sad to say, most of the examples that Casper used in his masculine decks are what I have. So I have more masculine decks in my collection, but like people, they after a while they show a different side to them. So one very straightforward masculine deck to me, will be the Vertigo Tarot by Dave McKean. So although Dave McKean's art is very surreal, so it's not a very solid art form, so to speak, because of the black and the very clear distinction between the object, which is the art itself, and the surroundings, which is the border. There's a it's like color against something very black, and I often see black and white as a very masculine object. How should I say, masculine property. So at the very first look, even though it's of a surreal art subject, the deck is already very masculine to me, and the colors are pretty saturated to me, not in the way that how graphic novels are colored, the very typical superhero colors, the red, yellow and blue. It's not that kind, but the colors are pretty fiery, pretty masculine. And I noticed some comments in Casper's video talking about the structure of the form, the body, and I do concur to that. Look at this kind of body torso shape. It is a very masculine form to me, in the way the muscles and the structure of the body, the gang, is brought up. And indeed, this deck, when I use it, it is often very clear in what I say, even though the subject is very surreal, and it feels it is dreamy, being a surreal style, but the voice it speaks in is not talking in roundabouts. It is pretty instructive. And I would often put pick decks as a masculine art. This is the corte del Tarocchi. I don't know how to pronounce that, so sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. So this is a peep deck. Why do I say peep decks are masculine to me? It's because I would think numbers is a very masculine topic, requiring logic. So it is very clear cut. If there are 8 cups here, it is 8 of cups. There's no quarreling with it. So it's black and white in this manner. And the art of the peep decks are typically very distinct. So in this case, it's not a very good example because it is kind of a modern rendition of a peep deck, and the art itself looks a bit innocent, but it is still a masculine deck to me because of its peepishness. 2 of wands is 2 of wands, and you cannot argue with that. Now, I would like to bring a few atypical examples of a masculine deck, and one of it will be the Stella's Tarot. So, the moment I bring this up, you will surely tell me that this surely isn't a masculine deck because the colors and the art style are very sweet, but through my working with this deck, I find that it has a detached voice, so very far off. So it's kind of like how a king talks to his subject, or like how a president or the government passes down their instructions to the people. So there's a sense of coldness about the Stella's Tarot, which I find it difficult to read at first. So I have to use some other decks to work with it, kind of like a combination. But even although now I learn how to read this deck, but I still use it to read for more logical or more decision making stuff, or something requiring me to look at things from a different angle. So a typical deck for a masculine deck, and well, we can say that it's maybe a bit masculine because the colors are very saturated, but you will see later, this is not the art style itself. I still think that this is quite a feminine art style because it's very sweet. Yeah. And then this deck, am I doing something wrong here? Because it's watercolors and it's very pastel colors. So even though the Linestrider, it does have a very feminine look to it. In fact, I usually use this deck to read for people who are not avid users or having a lot of knowledge about tarot, because it feels very inviting and very soft. But why do I call it a masculine deck? Through my workings with it, even though it looks very soft, its voice is quite decisive, and although it doesn't put things very bluntly, I would say that this is because part of the reason may be because the object the art itself has a very clear distinctness from the stark white of the background. And for example, in this case, the Hierophant, it looks very is one of the most masculine card in this deck, in that you can see the stark blackness of the keys and the hands. There's the structure, the torso, the muscles is emphasized in this deck. And then the final example of a masculine deck that I would like to show is the Dreaming Way Tarot. By this time, people will, I guess, quite a lot of people will want to argue with me already, but yes, I do agree that it has a feminine look, like the Linestrider Tarot in the last example, in that the lines are very soft, the colors are very soft, very pastel-y. But through my workings with this deck, in fact, I will always remember the first reading I did with this deck was with my friend, and in the usual 3-card reading, the deck immediately gave 3 swords card, and one being the 10 of swords. So it is a very blunt, very logical, it doesn't pull back punches. And even after that reading, after several tries with other people, I still find that this deck still retains that very blunt, very logical way of speaking. And so even if it looks like a feminine deck, its voice is not feminine at all. So having gone through all these examples, you will notice what I have, the atypical examples, and what was the word I used in describing why they are masculine decks to me. That's because I work a lot with them. So other than the looks itself, on first look, indeed it is a feminine deck, but like how you work with people, when you talk more with people, the more their personality will show. So communication with the deck is also very important. And then having spoke about the masculine decks, I'd like to show some feminine decks. So the first one will be the Crystal Tarot. So yes, it is a peep deck. So another example where I slapped my own mouth again, but the lushness of this deck, and you see how the lines are colored and not black and white. The colors used are very feminine to me, even though it's not very pastel-y at all. It is quite saturated, but this deck has a lush voice, lush look and a lush voice, requiring me to read more with my intuition, since although it looked like a peep deck itself, it is not a peepish system. It is using another system which I cannot pronounce the name of. So it is a feminine deck to me. And having said that, I do not own many feminine decks. The next one will be my last example, and I would like to just make a shameless plug for my own deck. So my own deck, which is the Tarot of Passing Showers. Yes, the lines are black and white, black, and the borders are very distinct from the object itself. But this time it's more of a straightforward pastel-y color. So it is feminine, but it still retains a bit of the masculine energy. So I would still put this under a bit more feminine part due to the colors and the kind of line art, which is not so thick but a bit more feathery. And through working with my own deck, I also find that it's not very stern or very very cold and distant like the creator herself. Yes, I don't talk a lot. I'm very quiet. I'm a very quiet person. So I'm just glad that my own deck, while being quiet looking, it doesn't talk bluntly like the actual creator in real life. So these are some examples of the decks that I own, which are feminine and masculine. Being a person who likes anime or art, I of course pay a lot of attention to the artwork of the deck. So, and that's usually the first thing people see. So you get attracted due to possibly the feminine and masculine nature. But like all of us, I don't believe anyone is fully masculine or fully feminine. It's like a skill, and through working more with the deck, like how you talk more with the people you seek to understand, you will see that they actually have a big range of expressions. So while labeling decks like how we label people is the easiest way to go, it is not often very indicative. So I would like to encourage you all to, while looking at the art itself, try to look up more for what masculine and feminine art or the tone means to you, and you can make your own decision from there. Thank you.